Ah, and here we are. Woo! Stephen A. Smith, boy, this has been a hell of a month for you. Well, now we got to rewind the clock to remind people of who you are. Yep, got to rewind them and remind them. Got to rewind them and remind them. Shouts out to at Kwame Brown Bus Life Sports. Don't forget to subscribe to that page that he got. Don't forget to subscribe to Ticket TV and welcome to HD with the Two Eyes TV. And don't forget to subscribe here, Carsino for Life channel. Yep. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Now, Stephen A. Smith, we know, makes a career out of trashing NBA players, right? And he uses NBA players to try to force a narrative that he's trying to portray and make an example. And because he's trying to make an example or a case, he would basically lie and fabricate and give and create a reason for you that's not even necessarily true. He know it isn't true, but he's creating a narrative that never existed. And yes, hit the like button for the video. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, the like button is free. He created a narrative that never existed and tried to make that the reason for him to go at Glenn Big Dog Robinson. We're here to discuss the real reason why all of this went down the way it did. Now, Glenn Big Dog Robinson had gotten in trouble here in Chicago. He had an altercation with his baby mother. And once he did that, Stephen A. and others reported on it. And now, since he's had this case with his baby mother, or his child's mother, or however you want to word it, we'll talk more on Patreon about that and what happened there. But once that happened, he was out of Atlanta in a year. And he signs a deal to go to the 76ers. At this time, Stephen A. Smith is a 76ers nut holder. This is what made his career, chasing Allen Iverson and following AI around. And these are the factors in what built him. Writing about Allen Iverson, being the people's champion, they gave him access because Billy King took over. Um, Pat Croce, I think at that point, had sold the team. And went on to do other things. Stephen A. had built himself up off of this notion. And right away, when they got Glenn Big Dog Robinson, he really didn't care. about what Big Dog had done with his baby mother anymore. All that was out the window. He was now a 76er. But once the 76ers wasn't winning, and Randy Ayers, who's a first-time head coach, was at the helm, Randy Ayers and Glenn Robinson had friction. Stephen A. Smith decided to take and blame everything on Glenn Robinson and blame all of the losses, everything was on one player. Wasn't Allen Iverson. It was Glenn Big Dog Robinson. Completely dogging him. So they were supposed to play at a certain game or whatever, and he had said some things, and Glenn Robinson got in his face to the point where they were about to fight. Glenn Robinson had to be restrained because Stephen A. was under the false sense of security of, he's under a $68 million contract. There ain't no way he's gonna put his hands on me. So he had that bravado of, I can say whatever I want. And I can stand my ground. And he created a narrative that he got Randy Ayers fired, who was a black coach. But when you was with George Karl, you was happy and all of this. But it was all a false narrative. That's not the reason why. But let's get into it. Let's listen to the blowout because Stephen A. gets drunk, goes on someone's show, and I mean drunk off ego, and he's on this lady's show, and he brings up what happened 10 years ago, where he almost got the crap beat out of him by Glenn Big Dog Robinson.
My issue with Glenn Big Dog Robinson was not that, okay, he didn't play well and he got 69 million or anything like that. It was that I saw this man march lockstep with what George Karl wanted to do because George Karl getting paid $7 million a year. But Randy Ayers becomes the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. He's on a 3-year deal, but he's only getting paid $1.5 million. If you know anything about the NBA, they'll fire you and get rid of that and just soak your contract and pay you off. You treated this man like trash, but you'll come and talk to reporters about how brothers need to facilitate brothers being hired, but you had one. And how'd you treat him?
That's really not the reason. That's the reason that he's trying to portray. But the real reason that bothers me is because I got into his face, and it almost got physical. And we know what the outcome would have been if things would have got physical. I probably would have ended up getting a big, healthy Ron Artest fine on top of it. Then he would have tried to sue me for 68, 67 out of my $68 million contract. So at the end of the day, it really wasn't worth it. But I just want to say one more thing. I mean, I would want the brother to ties me for another 12 years. So I mean, if you really want to, I mean, we can set something up and put it on TMZ Sports, and we can take it to the cage.
Now, you see, Big Dog had to bring it up because Big Dog had really never had anything to say. He never brought the situation up. Stephen A. did and brought his name up, talking about he despised him. You despise him because he doesn't like you. You blamed another black man for a coach that got fired in the middle of the season in his first year. He didn't even get to finish. And you think Glenn Big Dog Robinson was responsible for that? Allen Iverson is the captain of that team. They just traded and brought in Big Dog Robinson. They brought in a lot of players on that team. They brought in Derek Coleman. They brought in a lot of different players. That was the first year after Larry Brown stepped away and went to the Pistons. And the 76ers, who finished a game out of winning the division, the East, what was it? I think Jersey won that year. And I know they was like a game behind or something. They went from that to the bottom. But a lot of things happened. Allen Iverson got hurt. A lot of people got injured. And the chemistry wasn't there anymore. But once AI got hurt, that was the season. But that's neither here nor there. But this is what happens when somebody responds back to Stephen A. This is what he does.
All right. So that was Glenn Robinson offering to take it to the cage here and responding to you, Stephen A. Smith. What's your reaction to that? We heard on TMZ Sports. Take them off.
You know, I thought about this long and hard because the street in me wanted to react differently, you know.
The street in you? You see? There you go. The street in me wanted to react differently. What street is that? Beverly Hills Boulevard? Sunset Avenue? What the hell you mean? The street in you. Ain't no damn street in you.
With some of the things that he said, but I'm a grown man. I'm 48 years old. I'm in the position that I'm in. I'm not going to go there. The biggest reason I'm not going to go there, though, is not just because I'm a grown man, I'm a professional, but it's also because I'm the one that was wrong. Believe it or not, regardless of what Glenn Robinson had to say, it was my fault. Which is why this past Friday, on my radio show, Sirius XM, Mad Dog Sports Radio, the Stephen A. Smith Show, I went on my show at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. And I apologized for even bringing up his name. Because the reality is that he retired after 2005. He's been gone for 10 years, pretty irrelevant. And my name never came out of his mouth. It was wrong for me to answer that question by verbalizing his name.
When did you answer the question?
This was Wednesday, with the town hall meeting with Karen Hunter. She was given it was a town hall. It was a town hall in New York City, where I was the featured guest. She was interviewing me, and she asked about just my career and all of this other stuff. And then she asked me a question: is there, because you take controversial positions, or you're going to tell it like it is? And anybody ever approached you, come up to you, anybody you ever had that kind of animosity with? And initially, I wouldn't say his name, but then I said Glenn Big Dog Robinson.
To the town hall.
To the town hall.
But you didn't say it on your radio show.
No, I did not.
Okay,
no, I did not. So once they put it out, I went on the air and I said, just because things are true does not mean they should always be spoken of.
When you say they put it out, it just
they just put it out. They sent the link out to tease the fact that town hall was going to be aired, which it was. So when I heard about what Big Dog Robinson had to say about me, I was like, well, you know what? I deserve that because this man's been gone for years. He's never spoken about me. I shouldn't have said anything about him. I was wrong to do that. Now let me get to the big issue. I was wrong. It was my fault. I apologize for that because I shouldn't have brought up his name. Having said all of that, I stand by every word that I said in terms of its facts. We don't like one another. We never have liked one another. We never will like one another. And there was a confrontation in back in the day. Allow me to give you the details. Larry Brown decides to leave the Philadelphia 76ers and ultimately take the Detroit Pistons job. He leaves in May of 2003. He ultimately takes over the Pistons.
Yep.
They win the title the next year. Glenn Robinson, Randy Ayers is hired that June. Glenn Robinson arrives in Philadelphia in the offseason after his years in Milwaukee, where he never won a conference championship, never won an NBA championship. Matter of fact, the only time in his life he won an NBA championship is when he was riding the bench for the San Antonio Spurs, but that's neither here nor there.
Yep.
He comes to Philadelphia, and I will stand by this to my dying breath. I've never seen anybody more disrespectful to a head coach than I saw him act towards Randy Ayers. I'm reluctant to bring all of this up because Skip Bayless, Randy Ayers has moved beyond this. Randy Ayers doesn't want me talking about this. Billy King, who fired Randy Ayers after 52 games his first year when he was 21 and 31. All right. Billy King doesn't enjoy this subject being brought up. Obviously, I'm cool with both. I know both of them. It was a tenuous situation for Billy King to be put in. I thought that Randy Ayers was unfairly fired. And to this day, I contend that Randy Ayers got fired because of the disrespect that Big Dog Robinson displayed towards him, ignoring him in huddles, ignoring plays that he was called, doing other things. One time he walked out of the game, Randy Ayers didn't even notice, but Big Dog Glenn Robinson bumped into him on purpose. The respect was so flagrant. I was ticked off. I'm a columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer at the time, and it's my job to cover the team. And I watched and I saw what this dude did. And it was when he bumped into Randy Ayers that was the last straw for Billy King, who was the president of basketball operations, okay, who had hired Randy Ayers. It was at a game in East Rutherford, New Jersey, against the Nets. And when Billy King saw that, he said, enough's enough. I got to let go of Randy Ayers. And my point was, you constantly have brothers, at least back then when I was covering the team, talking about how, we got to look out for one another. You got a guy here, it should be some more coaches getting opportunities. But you marched in lockstep with George Karl, but then you turned around. And this is what you do to Randy Ayers. So I pointed all of that out on the air right here for ESPN. In the aftermath of that, there was an all-star weekend in Los Angeles at the Staples Center. Needless to say, Big Dog Robinson wasn't there. He wasn't invited. So then after that, the Philadelphia 76ers, immediately after All-Star Weekend, was on February 17th in Denver. I covered the team. I had to show up for the game. Big Dog Glenn Robinson shows up. He confronts me. He saw what I said. He gets in my face. He's talking a whole bunch of stuff at the time. Came right at me. He's absolutely right. He kind of left out that I came right back. Okay, nobody backed up, all right, because I was right, and I maintained that I'm right. Now I'm a grown man. I ain't getting in some MMA fight. I'm not getting into a fight with anybody. I'm not trying to engage in violence. The only level of violence I will ever engage in is if it's self-defense, because I ain't going to jail for anybody. Having said all of that, I still maintain I don't hold anything against him for what he said on TMZ. I deserve that because I never should have said his name out of my mouth. He's retired. He's been gone. Nobody's been thinking about him. I should not have answered that question. That's on me. But just like that's on me, the facts are for me. These matters are undeniable. The level of disrespect he showed towards Randy Ayers was so egregious, so unnecessary, so Bush League that every single criticism I gave him at that time, he deserved it. And I maintain that more than a decade later. I stand by every single damn word I said. It was factual. Eric Snow, Kenny Thomas, Samuel Dallenberg, Allen Iverson, Aaron McKee, the list goes on and on. They were all teammates. It was there. But I'm not going to engage in any fisticuffs. And if he thinks it's all right to brag about what he could do to me at 6'9", 250, you know, what he could do to me, you go right ahead. I'm not going to engage it. I'm not trying to incite violence or anything like that. I stand by what I said, and we do feel the way that we feel about one another. Of all the players that I've covered in the league, we have differences of opinion. He and I do have a level of disdain for one another. It will never change. But I still respect the fact that he was right to say what he said in terms of coming. I was wrong.
Okay.
I did that. That was
Okay,
my fault.
so
I instigated
my
it.
only question is, if you were quick to point out that you should not have started this, why do you feel a need to finish it now by reiterating all the old details?
Because I want to make sure, A, that when somebody asks me a question, if I'm going to answer it, I want to make sure people know that I'm not backtracking from what I said. I was being honest, number one. But number two, I want folks to know that he was absolutely right to respond to me because I should have never instigated it.
Yep.
It was my fault. I should have never done
Then
that.
maybe you should have just let it lay.
But letting it lay doesn't acknowledge that I was wrong. It just lets it lay. I'm man enough, if you're going to sit up in this chair and we got to call people out for the things that they do wrong, when you do wrong, you need to do it yourself. And I wanted to come on national TV today to acknowledge to folks, like I did. This is not a product of his video on TMZ.
Yeah.
Friday, I apologized on the radio show because I should have never said it, and I'm doing so again.
Okay.
I just wanted to validate where it
Okay,
came from so everybody can understand.
My 2 cents about Glenn Big Dog Robinson from a distance is he was never very respected around the league because he was never known as a player who played consistently hard for anybody in Milwaukee or Philly or San Antonio, wherever he went. So to me, I have not even thought about Glenn Big Dog Robinson for about 12 years, 10, 12 years. He hasn't even entered my mind. Obviously, I think about you every day of my life. And at this point, you are way, way, way
I know
bigger
that.
than Big Dog is.
Yes.
And so, to me, you're above all this. Like, you really don't need to defend yourself to the extent that you defend.
But I'm not defending myself. I'm here acknowledging that I have no defense. I instigated this.
Okay.
And so that's what this is. All I'm doing is highlighting and giving folks the details about what transpired because I want folks to understand. I'm man enough to admit I'm wrong when I'm wrong. I should have never instigated anything by uttering his name out of my mouth. That was wrong on my part, and I'm
Okay.
willing to acknowledge
You
it.
regret?
Now, he's willing to acknowledge he was wrong. Why isn't he willing to acknowledge he was wrong about Kwame? He admitted he was wrong, but continues to say that he was right. This is the perception, and the reason you got stepped to by Big Dog is because you was not telling the truth. Randy Ayers was not fired for Big Dog Robinson. Glenn Big Dog Robinson, what you forgot, was in Atlanta for a year. Then he came there. Glenn Big Dog Robinson was not fired. Randy Ayers was not fired because of big dog Glenn Robinson, but because you is a hack journalist. You are a hack journalist, and you've always been. You will see something and create a whole story behind it. You didn't do any investigating. You didn't go and interview people and ask them about it. You went with a narrative because what you saw in a game and made that the reality. Then when Randy Ayers got fired, that's when you started to woof and create it and try to make it a reality. Oh, he bumped the coach. Look at that. He's not even in the huddle. This is egregious. If you had investigated, you would have realized that you are friends with Billy King. Billy King gave you access into Philly to do the interviews, to do all of these things. But Billy King is the one that fired it. But you don't blame the general manager who fires a head coach in his first time coaching as head coach in his first season. He didn't even let him finish the year, and he fires him. And you think that's because of big dog Glenn Robinson? No. He was fired because Allen Iverson, Aaron McKee, Eric Snow, and other players outside of Glenn Robinson, they did not like the way he ran practices. He would have the veterans, what Randy Ayers did as a coach, he's more of a hands-on coach, works on footwork. He's more hands-on as an assistant. Some people are better at assistant coaching than being a head coach. And he's trying to work with the veterans like they're rookies. Veterans don't do all of the things that they do with the rookies. Like they're working on post games and the veterans are like, whoa, what's this? I don't need this. This is not what I need to be working on. I need to be trying to save my legs, my knees, and all that. No. You need to be having this training camp with the rookies and the second year players and guys who need work. I've been in the league 10 years, 11 years. Any post move that I don't know, I ain't finna learn it this season. And those were the complaints. But you didn't do your journalism. You didn't do the research because you never do. You're a hack. And because you were a hack, Glenn Robinson came and checked you for it. Because you tried to blame him and choose the black man and tear that one black man down because you weren't going to do Allen Iverson. You weren't going to do none of the veterans on that team who have been there all those years, who gave you those interviews. Oh, it's Glenn Big Dog Robinson because I saw it. No, the others complained too. That's what you left out. They all complained. That's why Billy King pulled the trigger. Because he knows I can't go another game. We ain't winning. There's a lot of friction in there, and Randy Ayers has to go. And he liked Randy Ayers, but he knew Randy Ayers wasn't a head coach. He wasn't ready to be. And he never, as you can see, Randy Ayers has been an assistant, right? Because he's good at being an assistant coach. Just assist. That head coaching chair is a little too much for you. And he would tell you that. So Stephen A. Smith once again proves his ego. He's sitting there defending himself, talking about, I apologize. But still, you're trying to blame this man and paint a narrative that Glenn Robinson, oh, he was lockstep with what George Karl wanted to do. Comparing Randy Ayers to George Karl as a head coach. Making that the narrative. Because Glenn Robinson spoke out about how people need to, stick up for the brother man. And you want to attack that narrative. So you paint a narrative that never existed. His problem with Randy Ayers had nothing to do with Randy Ayers being black. But you wanted to make that narrative the reason. That's why Glenn Robinson had to check your ass. And this is why people don't like you. You are poisonous. You saw something on the surface and you created a story behind it without any investigation whatsoever. You didn't do any other journalistic work. This is why other reporters didn't like you. They just called you Screaming A. Smith. They saw you as a hack. And you've done it and made a whole career out of trashing the brothers. That's it. You find a way, and you're doing it now with Kyrie Irving. He's your new Glenn Robinson, right? And everybody's like, man, like, what is with this guy? Like, nobody really talks to you at all. Nobody is stupid enough to talk to Stephen A. Smith. So now he just kind of show where he just creates narratives. And if it exists in his mind, oh, it's what's happening. Because that's what I think is going on. So don't forget to hit the like button. I hope this clarifies everything for you guys about Stephen A. Smith, what he is, what he stands for. Don't forget, we'll talk about some other stuff behind this on the Patreon. We'll do that later on. That'll be for all access and VIP. You will definitely have all access to that. And yes, definitely, if you want to support the page, my Cash App is Carcino. The Super Chat works. You can actually, what's the Cash App is Carcino. By all means, don't forget to follow everyone else's channels, from Kwame Brown Bus Life to his Bus Life Sports, and then you got HD, Welcome to HD TV. You got Blood Boxing, D Style Boxing, Boxing and Basketball, Ticket TV. You have everybody out here, man, doing their thing. There's tons of people out here. Self-taught. Many of people out here making things happen. So I don't want to hold you guys all day. You can click the little face with the sunglasses on it. The little face with the sunglasses with me looking too cool for school. I remember I was at work when I took that picture. Yeah, click that link. It'll take you to subscribe if you're new. There's some other videos you can click here to watch. And I'm out. Deuces. Yep, that's it. Merry Christmas.